Good day, audience. Today, we're going to talk about the topic of decolonization. Decolonization can be carried out in two ways. It can be transferred to the locals from the colonial power or wrestled for. In the case of Vietnam, power was wrestled by the Vietnamese. After World War II, in 1945 thereof, there was a man, Ho Chi Minh, a Vietnamese leader who was educated in France and had a keen interest in communist ideologies. He declared Vietnam independent as Vietnam had no leader in that short period of time, as Japan took over France during World War II. When the British were temporarily in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh negotiated with the British to tell them that they were independent, thus Vietnam was divided between North and South. The North was controlled by Viet Minh, which was run by Ho Chi Minh. When the French came back, they refused to acknowledge that Vietnam was independent. They had no intention to decolonize Vietnam. This was because Vietnam wanted to reclaim their empire and prestige. They also wanted to make Vietnam back to the was before the war. They also thought that Ho Chi Minh's party was a communist one, and having subscribed to the Marshall Plan, they were obligated to eliminate the communists. Then there was some negotiations between the Viet Minh, which is Ho Chi Minh's party. However, this failed and there came the First Indochina War in 1946. To the Vietnamese, the First Indochina War was a war for independence. To the French, the First Indochina War was a war to reclaim what they had claimed was rightfully theirs. The Indochina War was a colonial war that lasted 8 long years. And after 2 defeats in Dien Bien Phu and Quantum, the French gave up. Why were they defeated? This is because World War II was just a few years before this war. They thus were already weakened greatly during World War II by Germany. They also didn't have much support as there were communists in France itself, which opposed this war. As a result, from April 26 to July 20, 1954, the Geneva Accords took place to discuss whether to restore peace in Vietnam. Finally, they came to a decision to give in and grant independence to Vietnam. Though at this point Vietnam seemed to have its independence granted, the self-governance caused conflicts between North and South Vietnam, as they were run by different parties. The North was being run by Ho Chi Minh's New Democratic Republic of Vietnam, also known as DRV, but the South was run by Emperor Diem's Republic of Vietnam, or RVN. Many rural people resented Diem as he was seen as a corrupt and biased tyrant of an emperor, so they turned to the communist DRV. The North Vietnam's guerrilla team, the Viet Cong, were well trained and they launched many ambushes against RVN and their military group Army of the Republic of Vietnam, ARVN. The DRV also had support from their communist neighbors, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics or USSR, and the People's Republic of China, as it was the period of the Cold War, and they were concerned about encirclement by USA through Vietnam. The two neighboring Big Brothers of Vietnam provided vehicles and guns to the People's Army of Vietnam, or PAVN, which was North Vietnam Army. With this in mind, it is obvious that North Vietnam at this point in time was much stronger than the South. In 1961, the United States stepped in when South Vietnam signed a military and economic aid treaty with them. At that time, the United States saw this as a golden opportunity to prevent communism from spreading, as they had strong anti-communist domestic sentiments. From the beginning, they did not see this as a chance to deprive Vietnam of independence.
They knew that if the communists were to take over Vietnam, it would eventually continue to spread to the south. They predicted a scenario where communism would spread down through Asia to Australia and then across Europe. This was known as the domino theory. The United States felt that they could not let communism spread, as they felt that they were the protectors of the democracy and capitalism and protected them from the evil of communism. However, the actual reason was that the communist system went against the capitalist system, in which the United States strongly supported it. The communism system wanted to make a classless society by abolishing classes of wealth. This, of course, went against the grace of capitalism, as the capitalist system wanted to create a class society in which the rich becomes richer and the poor becomes poorer. Thus, by getting rid of class society, the United States felt that communism was destroying democracy and the capitalist system. By preventing the spread of communism, the capitalism system would not be destroyed and there would still be democracy. To the Viet Cong and the PAVN, this war had a similar goal to them as the previous one, to drive the foreign powers out of the country to be independent. However, it was an entirely different war to the US. This was a Cold War era proxy war, a war between capitalism and communism. The Vietnam War first started out with a small-scale battles like bombing in operation, such as Operation Flaming Dart and Operation Rolling Thunder. North Vietnam still remained resilient and persistent, nevertheless, and the US made use of the air mobility strategy, where helicopters would send a battalion of US air mobile troops to a landing zone and fight the PAVN and Viet Cong. On the other side of the battle, the Viet Cong and PAVN avoided large-scale engagement and resorted to their usual guerrilla tactics, as they were aware that the stronger US could use helicopters and artillery fire if they were in the battlefield. The Viet Cong also had many spies that effectively concealed them among regular people, disguising as farmers, villagers, and so on. These spies were able to gather information for the Viet Cong so that ambushes can be planned and launched against the US and ARVN troops. In response, the US developed the Phoenix program, where teams were sent to capture potential Viet Cong spies and suspects. Neutralizing over 81,000 Viet Cong, the Phoenix program proved to be effective in undermining the Viet Cong.
This guerrilla fight went on and on until a major turning point occurred in the 1968. The North Vietnam troops launched a series of surprise attacks on South Vietnam. This event was known as the Tet Offensive. The attack stunned both South Vietnam and US and caused them to lose control over several cities the communists had attacked. They surrendered with an excuse stating that it was because China, which was a communist country, was their ally. They stated that they did not want to spoil their good relationship with China, which was why they stepped out from the war. However, the real reason was that the Vietnam War had a negative impact on their economy, despite the US and South Vietnam counteracting and caused the North Vietnam forces to suffer massive casualties, ultimately winning the battle. The attacks still caused the US huge losses, and because of this, it caused a crisis among the Joint administration, which failed to convince the Americans in US of the major defeat of the communists. However, there was a huge troop request in South Vietnam, which amounted to 400,000 troops to be deployed there, costing $10 billion during fiscal 1969 and an addition of $15 billion in 1970. This was going to cause a huge hit in the US economy, including inflation and possible collapse of the monetary system. Thus, the US decided to surrender. Hence, in conclusion, North Vietnam and South Vietnam thus gained independence through the Indochina Wars. With the French and the US no longer disturbing Vietnam, it could finally govern itself.